There are people who do not simply see the world, they feel it. They walk through life with hearts like open instruments, resonating with every vibration, every whisper of emotion in the air. These are the empaths, the souls who carry the rare ability to sense what others conceal. But this gift, though divine in essence, often becomes their burden, because to truly feel another person is to touch their truth, and most people are not ready to be felt that deeply. The empath's presence is not just kind, it is revealing. They walk into a room, and without uttering a word, something shifts. The air thickens with awareness, faces tighten, conversations change tone, because on some level, everyone senses it. The empath can see beyond the facade. They may not know how, but they can feel what is unsaid, what is unhealed, what is still hiding behind laughter and charm. The empath becomes an invisible mirror, silently reflecting the parts of others that they themselves avoid. To look into that mirror is to encounter one's own denied emotions. The empath does not expose through confrontation. They expose through reflection. Their eyes, their silence, their compassion, they all carry truth. When someone looks at them, they sense something ancient staring back, something that knows. It is not the empath's fault that others become uncomfortable in their presence. The discomfort comes from within the observer, not from the one being observed. It comes from realizing that their carefully built image, their polished identity, cannot deceive what is pure and awake. And so, instead of embracing this reflection, people resist it. They project their unease outward. They call the empath too sensitive, or too emotional, too intense. But these labels are defenses. They are shields used by the unconscious mind to avoid self-confrontation. What they truly mean is, you make me feel things I am not ready to face. The empath's existence disrupts denial. Their compassion cuts through deception. Their emotional intelligence unravels the false comfort of ignorance. And this, to many, feels like danger. Yet the empath is not trying to threaten anyone. They are merely being. They are mirrors, because they have learned to see themselves. The empath's reflection is born from their own inner work, from the hours they have spent in solitude, feeling what others repress, from the pain they have faced without turning away, from the honesty they have chosen when pretense would have been easier. They have descended into their own shadow, not to conquer it, but to understand it. And because they have faced their own darkness, they now illuminate the hidden darkness of others simply by existing. In this way, the empath becomes both the healer and the disruptor. Their empathy is medicine, but medicine is rarely sweet. Healing is not comfort. It is confrontation. When people come near the empath, their unspoken wounds start surfacing. Their inner conflicts rise. Their unresolved pain begins to echo. And they may not know why they feel anxious, irritable, or exposed around this person. It is because the empath's energy has awakened what was asleep within them. This is why so many empaths are misunderstood or rejected. They carry light in a world still in love with shadows. They speak truth in a world addicted to illusion. They love without manipulation in a world that trades affection for control. Their depth reveals the shallowness of those who pretend. Their sincerity unmasks the pretender's performance. Their calm presence threatens those who thrive on chaos. It is not hatred that drives people away from them. It is fear. Fear of the mirror that shows them what they have refused to see. The empath's mirror does not lie. It shows every fracture in the mask, every bruise under the armor, every whisper of pain hiding behind pride. And yet, the empath does not judge what they see. They reflect it with compassion, not condemnation, because they understand that the anger, the deceit, the coldness, all of it is a cry for love in disguise. They do not take hostility personally, because they know that when someone lashes out, they are not attacking the empath's light, they are defending their own shadow. In the silent mirror of the empath, truth finds no place to hide. It rises, trembling, exposed, desperate for recognition. And those who are ready to grow, those who are brave enough to look, will find transformation in that reflection. They will see not just their wounds, but their capacity to heal them. They will see their unlived emotions, their suppressed authenticity, their forgotten tenderness. But those who are not ready will turn away. They will call the mirror cruel, even though it only reflected what was already there. The empath, in turn, must learn to hold their power with awareness. They must understand that being a mirror does not mean carrying the reflections of others. The empath's role is not to absorb what is seen, but to witness it. Because if they mistake the pain of others for their own, they lose clarity, the mirror becomes clouded, the reflection distorts. True empathy requires boundaries, not walls. Compassion with consciousness, feeling with discernment. The empath's greatest strength is not just sensitivity, but awareness of how to direct it. To mirror without absorbing, to feel without drowning, to love without losing oneself. This is the art of the awakened empath. They no longer see their gift as a curse. They understand that the world needs their reflection, even if it rejects it. They walk with quiet strength, knowing that to reflect truth is to awaken it. And though their presence may unsettle the false, it liberates the real. Because every time the empath mirrors someone's hidden truth, a seed of self-awareness is planted in that person's soul. And one day, when the mask finally falls, that seed will begin to grow. Every human being carries within them two worlds, the one they show and the one they hide. The first is the self they present to the world, composed, capable, confident. The second is the shadow, the collection of fears, wounds, and denied emotions they refuse to acknowledge. This hidden realm does not disappear simply because it is unseen. Instead, it seeps out through the cracks of behavior, through judgment, envy, resentment, and attraction. It lives in the unspoken places, in the way we react to others, in the qualities we despise, and even in the traits we admire but cannot embody. Projection is the unconscious bridge between these two worlds. When a person cannot face what lives in their own shadow, they cast it outward. They find someone else to hold it for them, a mirror onto which they project the parts of themselves they cannot accept. The empath, being deeply attuned and emotionally transparent, often becomes that mirror. Because their energy is clear, others see their own reflection within it, though they mistake it for something external. The empath becomes a canvas for other people's disowned emotions. And this is where misunderstanding begins. When someone encounters an empath, they are not just meeting another person, they are meeting their own unconscious. The empath's presence awakens buried material. The liar feels exposed, the manipulator feels seen, the emotionally numb feel overwhelmed. It is not that the empath does anything deliberate. It is the natural state of awareness that acts as a psychological mirror. And because the human ego fears exposure, it responds with resistance. This resistance is what we interpret as hatred, criticism, or withdrawal. But underneath those reactions lies fear, the fear of seeing one's own shadow staring back. The shadow is not evil, it is simply unintegrated. It holds the emotions we were told not to feel: anger, envy, sadness, vulnerability, desire. It holds every quality that didn't fit the image we created of ourselves. Society trains us to reject parts of our humanity in exchange for acceptance. Children learn early that to belong, they must suppress certain truths. The quiet child learns to smile through pain. The angry child learns to swallow rage. The sensitive child learns to numb themselves. Yet what is buried does not die, it waits. And when it meets someone whose light is strong enough to expose it, it rises. This is why people often turn against the empath. The empath reflects the emotional truth others have spent years avoiding. To the unconscious mind, that reflection feels like an attack. It feels invasive, even though it is simply accurate. The ego, desperate to preserve its illusion, begins projecting blame outward. Instead of thinking, "This person makes me feel something I need to understand," the mind says, "This person is the problem." And so the empath becomes the target of projection, accused of being controlling, dramatic, overly emotional, or manipulative. The irony is that these accusations often reveal more about the accuser than the accused. Projection is the language of the unhealed psyche. When people cannot own their darkness, they paint it onto others. They accuse the empath of the very behaviors or emotions they themselves embody but cannot accept. This unconscious defense protects them from self-awareness temporarily. Yet the more they project, the more disconnected they become from their authentic self. They begin to live as fragments, constantly defending an image instead of integrating their truth. The empath, meanwhile, absorbs these projections like static energy. If they are unaware, they internalize it and start believing something is wrong with them. But the empath's true lesson is to see projection for what it is: a shadow in disguise. Every judgment, every rejection, every emotional attack from others is rarely about them. It is about the other person's struggle with their own reflection. When the empath learns this, they stop carrying the emotional weight of others. They begin to see the pattern. Those who fear vulnerability will call them weak. Those who fear honesty will call them harsh. Those who fear love will call them na-vi. The words are never truly about the empath. They are coded confessions of the speaker's own shadow. Understanding projection changes everything. The empath begins to realize that they are not here to fix others, but to understand them. They stop absorbing pain and start observing it. They stop personalizing hatred and start perceiving fear. Every encounter becomes a revelation, a window into the human psyche. The empath sees how people run from themselves, how they build elaborate masks to hide their pain, and how those masks crumble in the presence of authenticity. The empath's mirror is both gift and test. It awakens what others bury and challenges them to see it clearly. The shadow, when faced, becomes power. But when denied, it becomes poison. Those who refuse to confront their own darkness are doomed to live haunted by it, projecting it endlessly onto others. The empath often becomes their unwilling witness, carrying their projections until they learn discernment. To be an empath is to walk through a landscape of mirrors, to constantly navigate between what belongs to you and what belongs to them. It requires clarity, courage, and an unwavering commitment to self-awareness. because every act of projection you endure reveals a truth about the projector. What they hide, what they fear, what they long to heal. The empath's challenge is not to absorb this reflection, but to understand its language, to see the hate as pain, the judgment as fear, the rejection as avoidance. In doing so, they step out of the cycle of projection and into the realm of consciousness. They become not just mirrors of others, but mirrors of truth itself. They no longer fight the shadow, they illuminate it. And through that illumination, even the darkest projections lose their power. There is something profoundly unsettling about a person who radiates truth. Not the kind of truth that demands attention or boasts of moral superiority, but the quiet, unwavering authenticity that needs no performance. Authenticity is magnetic, but it is also confronting. It draws in those who crave it, yet it repels those who have built their identity upon illusion. The empath, who naturally embodies this authentic light, becomes a living paradox, loved for their warmth, yet feared for their clarity. Their presence exposes what others hide, not through judgment, but through simple being. Authentic light is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue or seek validation. It just is. And because it simply exists without disguise, it threatens everything that depends on disguise to survive. The false self, the egoic construct built to win approval, admiration, or control, cannot coexist comfortably in the presence of authenticity. It begins to tremble, to feel small, to feel naked. The very existence of someone unpretentious, genuine, and emotionally transparent calls into question every mask others wear. This is why authenticity, though divine, often provokes discomfort rather than admiration. In a world that thrives on projection, pretension, and performance, to stand as your unfiltered self is a radical act. It disrupts the unspoken contract of illusion that most people live under. The silent agreement to keep playing roles, to maintain appearances, to pretend that pain is power and vulnerability is weakness. The empath does not play by these rules. Their light comes from honesty. They speak with emotional truth. They move through the world attuned to what is real, not what is expected. And for many, that kind of light burns too brightly. It forces them to see their own shadows more clearly. When someone encounters authentic light, two things happen simultaneously. The soul feels recognition, and the ego feels threatened. The soul whispers, "This is what I've been missing," while the ego shouts, "This makes me feel small." That inner conflict creates the strange tension people feel around the empath. They are drawn to their sincerity, but afraid of what it reveals. They crave their openness, but resent the way it uncovers their pretenses. The empath doesn't have to expose anyone. Truth does that on its own. Light is not selective. It reveals everything it touches, both the beautiful and the broken. For the inauthentic self, exposure feels like death. When someone's entire identity has been constructed to hide inadequacy or pain, authenticity feels like an existential threat. To meet someone real is to feel your own falseness trembling beneath the surface. It's not hatred that rises in those moments. It's fear. The fear of being seen without the armor. The fear of losing the image that one has spent years maintaining. The fear that if the light touches too much, the mask will fall and reveal the wounded child underneath. The empath, however, does not shine to expose. They shine to connect. Their light comes from empathy, from the desire to understand, to comfort, to share truth in its purest form. Yet that same light when met by someone still trapped in illusion, feels invasive. It stirs discomfort because it doesn't allow denial to rest peacefully. It awakens awareness where ignorance once provided safety. The empath's calm energy says, without words, "You don't have to pretend here." But for those who cannot yet face their authentic self, that invitation feels unbearable. They resist it. They retreat from it. They may even attack it. Authentic light carries a vibration that the false self cannot endure for long. You can recognize this by how people behave around it. Some feel at home in it. They exhale, they soften, they feel seen. Others fidget, change the subject, or look away. It's not that they dislike the empath personally. It's that their own unintegrated parts feel exposed. Light dissolves illusion, and the ego clings to illusion for survival. The more someone identifies with their persona, the mask they show to the world, the more they will fear those who see through it. In every relationship, there comes a silent moment of truth, a moment when the light of authenticity meets the walls of the false self. The empath often senses this shift before the other person does. It's when a friend begins pulling away, when a partner grows distant, when a colleague turns cold. The empath feels the energy change, not because of something they said or did, but because the other person has reached their threshold of exposure. The empath's light has touched a wound they were not ready to confront. And instead of facing the wound, they retreat into defense. To understand this fear is to see the nature of the human psyche. Most people are not consciously rejecting truth. They are protecting their sense of identity. The ego survives by maintaining familiar patterns, even if those patterns cause suffering. When the empath's authenticity enters the equation, it threatens those patterns. It whispers, "You can be free," but freedom requires surrender, and surrender feels like loss to those who have spent their lives hiding behind control. The empath's task, then, is not to dim their light to make others comfortable. It is to understand that their light will not always be welcomed. Some will mistake it for arrogance, others for intrusion. Yet the light is neither. It is simply the reflection of self-awareness, the natural radiance that comes from living without masks. To embody authenticity is to live as a mirror for others, not through effort, but through essence. It reveals both the beauty and the distortion in those who look into it. When people turn away from the empath's light, it is not rejection in the truest sense, it is a moment of overwhelm. The false self needs darkness to maintain its illusions. The empath, unknowingly, becomes the dawn, and dawn, though beautiful, always arrives with discomfort for those who have lived too long in the night. Every human interaction is an exchange of energy long before it becomes an exchange of words. Beneath every conversation, behind every glance, and within every silence, energy flows, unseen but deeply felt. The empath lives in this invisible current, absorbing subtle vibrations that most people ignore. They walk through a world of frequencies, sensing moods, intentions, and emotions that others have not yet acknowledged within themselves. To the empath, energy is language. Every sigh, every pause, every shift in tone carries meaning. But this profound awareness is both a gift and a weight, for the empath not only feels their own emotions, but also the emotional residues of those around them. An empath's energy field acts like a sponge. It absorbs, interprets, and reflects. They do not consciously decide to tune in. It happens automatically. When someone angry enters the room, The empath feels tension before words are spoken. When someone is in pain but smiling, the empath senses the hidden ache beneath the performance. This is why empaths often appear tired or withdrawn after social interactions. Their nervous system is constantly processing information others cannot see. What feels like intuition to the empath is, in truth, an intricate awareness of emotional energy constantly shifting and transferring between people. Every interaction, no matter how brief, involves an energetic transaction. People project emotions they cannot hold. They offload their anxiety, frustration, or sadness onto others without realizing it. The empath, by nature, becomes the receiver of this transfer. Their open heart and sensitive field invite energy to flow freely toward them. This is not weakness, it is resonance. The empath's energy vibrates on frequencies of compassion and openness, which magnetize unhealed emotions from others. Those who cannot face their feelings unconsciously seek empaths to carry them, as though proximity to empathy offers temporary relief. The empath feels this as heaviness, confusion, or fatigue, not understanding that the emotions they feel may not even be their own. True emotional awareness begins when the empath learns to distinguish between what belongs to them and what belongs to others. Without this discernment, life becomes an endless cycle of energetic overload. They wake up heavy without reason, experience sudden mood shifts in crowds, or feel anxious after listening to someone's pain. The empath believes these emotions are personal when, in reality, they are echoes of someone else's suffering. Awareness transforms this experience from burden to understanding. When the empath recognizes that energy is transferable, they begin to see the world not as chaos but as communication. Every emotion carries information. Every sensation is a message from the energetic field. In emotional exchanges, intention matters more than expression. Words can lie, but energy cannot. The empath senses sincerity not by logic, but by vibration. A person saying, "I'm fine," while carrying despair feels like static electricity against the empath's calm. The empath feels what is real, not what is said. This makes them powerful healers, counselors, and companions, yet also vulnerable to emotional manipulation. Those who recognize their sensitivity may use it unconsciously, drawing comfort from the empath's calm without offering balance in return. Over time, the empath's energy becomes drained, their body tense, their mind cluttered with feelings that were never theirs to begin with. Energy exchange, when unconscious, leads to depletion, but when conscious, it becomes a dance of mutual awareness. The empath must learn to stay open without absorbing, to connect without carrying. This requires presence, the ability to witness emotion without merging with it. Emotional awareness is not about closing off from others, but about staying rooted in one's own energy while acknowledging the energy of others. It is the art of empathy with boundaries, compassion without sacrifice. The empath begins to ask, "Is this feeling mine?" And with that question, the energetic fog begins to clear. When awareness sharpens, the empath starts noticing patterns. They realize that energy exchange is constant through conversation, through eye contact, even through digital communication. They sense that some people uplift their field while others drain it. They understand that environments carry emotional residue. Rooms filled with conflict retain tension, while places filled with joy feel light. The empath begins to see the architecture of emotion woven through reality. This realization transforms their sensitivity from vulnerability into intelligence. They no longer merely feel energy, they read it, interpret it, and navigate it with mastery. With awareness comes responsibility. The empath learns to cleanse their energy, not out of superstition but necessity. Solitude becomes sacred, silence becomes medicine. Nature, water, breath, and stillness become ways to reset their frequency. Because without cleansing, the empath's inner world becomes crowded with emotional debris, not their own. Their intuition dulls, their peace fades, and their authentic light dims beneath the weight of others' pain. Releasing this energy is not rejection, it is self-preservation. It allows them to return to equilibrium, to serve as mirrors rather than sponges. Emotional awareness also teaches the empath that energy is reciprocal. Just as they absorb, they also emit. Their calm presence can soothe chaos. Their compassion can dissolve anger. Their understanding can soften defensiveness. Energy flows both ways. When the empath stays grounded in love, their vibration becomes medicine for others, but only when given consciously, not drained unconsciously. They realize that their energy is not infinite. It is a sacred resource that must be managed with wisdom. To give without grounding is to empty oneself. To feel without awareness is to drown in emotions that do not belong to them. The empath's evolution depends on transforming emotional sensitivity into emotional mastery. They begin to live as observers of energy rather than victims of it. They move through interactions with awareness, allowing emotions to pass through them like wind through an open window. They stop trying to rescue others from their pain and instead hold space for transformation. They learn that true empathy does not mean carrying the burden, but reflecting it back with understanding. Through this awareness, energy exchange becomes a sacred dialogue, a meeting of souls, not a collision of wounds. In this flow of awareness, the empath no longer sees sensitivity as fragility. They see it as perception, a way of reading the unspoken layers of existence. They realize that emotions are not random. They are energy in motion, constantly moving, seeking release and recognition. To feel deeply is to participate in this universal dance of energy, to understand that every interaction shapes the emotional climate of the world, and that the most powerful act of awareness is to remain present, receptive, and rooted in one's own truth. The journey of the empath is not about fixing the world, but about understanding the self within it. The empath's gift begins as sensitivity, the ability to feel what others feel, to sense the hidden layers beneath emotion, to absorb the unspoken pain that lingers in silence. Yet beneath this gift lies a deeper calling to know oneself beyond the borrowed energies, beyond the inherited wounds, beyond the endless projections of others. True transcendence begins the moment the empath turns inward and asks, "Who am I beneath everything I feel?" Self-understanding is not a destination, but an unfolding, a process of peeling away the layers of conditioning, expectation, and emotional inheritance that have shaped identity. Most empaths spend years believing that their worth is tied to how much they can carry for others. They take on sorrow like responsibility, confusion like obligation, and pain like proof of love. Their compassion becomes a silent burden, a constant merging with the emotions of the world. Yet in this merging, the self becomes blurred. The empath begins to confuse the voice of others with their own inner voice, mistaking external noise for internal truth. Transcendence through self-understanding begins when the empath learns the art of differentiation, the ability to feel deeply without losing themselves. This shift requires awareness. It begins with recognizing the subtle boundary between empathy and enmeshment. Empathy allows one to understand another's experience. Enmeshment dissolves that boundary and absorbs it. The empath's growth depends on learning that they can witness pain without becoming it. That realization marks the first moment of liberation, not detachment from others, but reconnection with the self. Self-understanding is an act of honesty. It asks the empath to look within and confront their own shadow, the parts of themselves they've hidden behind service, kindness, and emotional caretaking. Many empaths develop their gift in response to trauma. They learned early that attunement kept them safe, that by reading the moods of others, they could predict danger, avoid rejection, or maintain peace. This survival mechanism becomes identity. But beneath the surface lies exhaustion. The empath realizes that they have been living as a reflection of others rather than as an expression of their own essence. To transcend this pattern, they must face the truth their empathy, while sacred, has been shaped by pain. To understand the self is to meet every emotion without resistance. The empath, so skilled at sensing others, often avoids their own emotional landscape. They drown in the feelings of others while neglecting their own. Yet every suppressed emotion becomes a block in the flow of awareness. Anger turns to fatigue. Sadness becomes numbness. Confusion transforms into self-doubt. The empath's path to transcendence demands courage. The courage to feel their own emotions fully, not as burdens, but as teachers. Each feeling becomes a mirror, revealing something forgotten, something waiting to be integrated. Through this inner exploration, the empath begins to notice a profound truth. Emotions are not enemies, but messengers. They reveal where energy is stuck, where understanding is incomplete, where healing is still needed. The empath learns to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. They learn that sadness is not weakness, but depth. That anger, when understood, is a boundary in disguise. That guilt is not truth, but a distorted echo of unhealed expectations. With each moment of awareness, they reclaim fragments of themselves that were once scattered through emotional over-identification with others. As self-awareness deepens, the empath begins to sense their energy differently. What once felt chaotic and overwhelming becomes structured and clear. They notice how their energy expands when aligned with truth and contracts when entangled in pretense. They see that sensitivity was never the problem. Unconsciousness was. Awareness transforms sensitivity into wisdom. The empath no longer reacts to emotions, but responds to them consciously. They begin to live from the center of their being, no longer swayed by every emotional current around them. This inner clarity brings a quiet strength. The empath no longer needs to rescue others to feel valuable. They understand that true compassion does not mean saving others from their pain, but allowing them to face it with dignity. The empath's role evolves from caretaker to mirror, from absorber to awakener. They hold space for others without losing their sense of self. This shift marks the beginning of transcendence, when the empath rises beyond emotional survival and enters emotional mastery. They no longer fear their depth, they live within it gracefully. Self-understanding also awakens discernment. The empath learns to sense the difference between connection and attachment, between helping and enabling, between intuition and anxiety. They become aware of how easily love can disguise itself as self-sacrifice. Through introspection, they realize that boundaries are not barriers, but bridges to authenticity. To say no is not rejection, it is self-respect. To walk away from chaos is not abandonment, it is preservation of peace. Each boundary formed from self-awareness strengthens their energy and deepens their empathy. For empathy rooted in self, respect becomes clarity, not chaos. Through self-understanding, the empath sees that their gift was never meant to be a wound. It was meant to be a form of wisdom. The ability to read energy, to translate emotion into meaning, to feel truth in a world numbed by pretense. But to embody that wisdom, they must first heal their own emotional body. They must sit with their inner child, the one who learned to absorb everyone's pain just to feel safe. They must tell that child, you no longer have to carry what is not yours. This moment of recognition is not grand or dramatic. It is subtle, like light returning to a room long closed. Transcendence is not escape. It is integration. It is the merging of awareness with acceptance. The empath who understands themselves no longer seeks validation through usefulness or belonging. They move through the world as observers of emotion, not prisoners of it. Their energy becomes centered, balanced, and grounded. They begin to see that self-awareness is not the opposite of empathy, it is its foundation. Only through knowing the self can one truly understand another. Only through feeling one's own pain can one hold another's without drowning. Only through awareness can the empath transform sensitivity into serenity, emotion into insight, and connection into consciousness,